Hey guys, this is JBOY from the JBOY Show. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's a free way to make podcasts. It's unbelievable. It's how I started. Number one, like I said, it's free. Number two, it gives you creative tools to be able to add to your podcast, whether it be background music and all type of stuff. Three, they can get it on Spotify, Apple. You can get paid with sponsorships just by using ads, very similar to this one. So, download the free Anchor app, guys. It's unbelievable. You'll love it. And at the end of the day, it can get you started. All right. See you soon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the JBOY Show. Brand new podcast that I'm launching that is going to deal with sports in general, maybe some current events. Obviously, it's going to be slanted, toward the SEC West, toward Auburn, and just kind of following up. I know right now there's not a whole lot going on, but I thought it'd be a good time to put this out here and see how it goes, and hopefully get some listeners. And you can find me on Twitter at the JBoy Show. If you don't know, this is Jake Crane. The JBoy Show, it's about as good as the title as I could have come up with. So if you want to ask questions, it's at the JBoy Show on Twitter. I'm also on Google Podcasts, Spotify at the JBoy Show, and Breaker as well. So really just starting out, I really kind of want to touch on really the only thing that's going on right now in the sphere of SEC sports, and really that's basketball recruiting. And right now, if you look, what Bruce Pearl's been able to do at Auburn, and obviously, being from Auburn and keeping up with Auburn, I've seen most of their recruiting classes, and Bruce Pearl's done an amazing job of, recruiting really sneaky good players. And he's signed 4 stars and obviously a 5-star with, Mustafa Heron and all that stuff. But, just the options that this class has from a talent level is on a different level than what Auburn's really, kind of gotten in the past and really kind of known for. And I mean sneaky by the Bryce Browns, the Jared Harpers. I mean, honestly, even the Chuma Okikis. I know he was a highly rated player and people thought he had a lot of upside, but I don't think anybody thought he was going to really turn into what he turned into, especially, in the NCAA tournament run a couple years ago. So, it's something at the end of the day where if Bruce Pearl can do that, with that group, there's no telling what he can do once he starts getting talent on the level of John Calipari and Mike Krzyzewski and Roy Williams and stuff like that. But if you really take a second, you look at who Auburn already has signed, because obviously there's some big fish out there. It's Wednesday, April 14th. So it's a day before Jalen Green announces, 9 days, I believe, before Greg Brown announces. So if you look right now at Auburn's class, obviously you start with Sharif Cooper, the 5-star point guard out of Powder Springs, out of McEachern, the same high school as Isaac Okoro, same high school as Dylan Cardwell. I think he's a backup plan for Auburn, but Sharif Cooper, I think, is a guy that, Bruce got with early on, and really, I think, gave the mantle, to being the leader of this recruiting class, kind of similar to what Bo Nix did a little bit. I think the way those two guys operate, obviously one's a quarterback and one's a point guard, so they both know they have to run the show. So they know what they want around him. Bruce knows what he wants around him, and just from what I've seen on film and really watched in the interviews, because I think those are just as important. What Sharif gives you, he's not a super tall guy, but again, Auburn's, had success with shorter point guards, a la Jared Harper, a la Doc Robinson, and really the kid reminds me of Doc Robinson a little bit. And I say that just because I always thought Doc had such a high basketball IQ. And when you watch Sharif play, to me, his body just follows his mind so fluidly. You can see him literally reading the passing lane as he's making the pass. And that's something, that is God-given. There's a reason he's a 5-star. Now, he's going to have to be able to hold up a little bit on the defensive end. That's going to be interesting to see. I think he's going to have to bulk up a little bit. I mean, being really 6 foot, which is what he is, you obviously don't want to put too much weight on him, but he's going to be a guy, a 2-3 year player at Auburn, that should be one of the best point guards that has touched foot in the 3-3-4. So obviously all the hype with him. And I think he's been a big part, obviously, of this recruiting class with some of the other guys, and we'll see how it goes down the stretch with him. But moving on, you have Justin Powell. He's the white kid from Goshen, Kentucky. really good shooter. I actually think if you watch the tape, his other game, the other aspects of his game, I think are a little bit underrated. It looks like he's able to drive with both hands. It looks like he's able to control his body, still get the ball off at the highest point and make shots. And you can tell he's got some dog in him too. Just watching him, just kind of watching the way he moves. You can tell he's really confident. I mean, the kid's a scorer. I know he's had a hip injury, and I'm guessing he will redshirt. Sharif obviously is not going to redshirt. Justin Powell, especially like I said, coming off that injury, is a kid that's probably going to need a year, which is fine. You hope you. I guarantee Bruce has been surprised before. He's been let down before, so you really never know. But at the end of the day, I think he's another guy, like I said, earlier, that's going to be a really good sneaky sign a year and a half, 2 years down the road. So I think he'll be a piece that Bruce will be happy with. Then you move on, you got Chris Moore. He's from West Memphis, Arkansas. Everybody had this kid going to Memphis. Actually, I believe, I can't remember the guy's name. It may have been Corey Evans. Had him it was Brooks Hansen, had him either Memphis or Arkansas, and he picks Auburn, which again, at the end of the day, and I'll tap into this here in a little bit, kind of in my coaching points, but you really kind of tap into, how the feeling the kid has late in the game. And again, like I said, that's something I'll get into, but it's a good pickup for Auburn. The kid's 6'6". He's got almost like a Malik Dunbar body type. I don't think he's as explosive as Malik, but I think he's a guy too down the road, and he may need a redshirt year because Auburn does have depth really at that 3 position. Sharif's obviously a 1. Justin Powell's going to have to be a 2. I think this kid, Chris Moore, is a kid that can be versatile. I think he's a high IQ guy. Really, the tape on him is he's solid. He's big and he's solid. There's some fundamental things I think he's really going to have to sharpen up like every freshman, but I think he's a guy who may come in surprised and get some minutes, especially if there's injuries. But I think if everything goes to plan, he'd probably be a guy that ends up taking a red shirt as well with Justin Powell. And closing out the signees right now is obviously the most recent one, JT Thor from Norcross. I mean, this is a huge signee for Auburn. I mean, the kid's 6'9.5", 6'10". He's left-handed, which poses more of a problem than you would think because it changes rotations, it changes driving. It does a lot of little things that you really don't think about unless you're out there on the court. The comparisons for this kid, he's a 4-star. He was a 5-star in 2021. He reclassified. I think he was at Huntington Prep in West Virginia and then transferred into Norcross. Reclassified to 2020, moved down to a 4-star. But if you really look at this kid's game, it almost mirrors, and again, I'm not saying he's the talent level Chris Bosh was, but it's very similar in how they attack offensively and kind of what they do defensively. And what I mean by that is the comparison that they're left-handed is one thing, but the ability to be that tall, shoot inside and out, and be able to handle the ball, not only on the perimeter to get yourself open for a shot, because when you're 6'9.5", 6'10", a lot of times you're going to be able to shoot over people, especially on the perimeter. But what I love about his game is that he makes shots. He's got kind of a slasher feel to him as well. And he's one of those guys, and we all know who they are. I used to be amazed at the shots that would go in for Malik Dunbar sometimes. And really, Javon McCormick, that you go in there and they throw a shot up, you think it has no chance. I'm not talking about a 3. I'm talking about a drive at a weird angle. He attacked a weird angle at the basket, and somehow the ball goes in. It may roll around 3 times and goes in, or it just one of those guys. And there's plenty of them, and that's kind of what I see from him. And he just creates such a matchup problem at size and length. And I think the kid's 200 pounds now. When he's 225, 230, I think he'll get on out there a little bit more than that. He is going to be a problem. I think he's going to be Auburn. I think it was a hell of a signing. It came down to Auburn and Oklahoma State. I know UCLA was in on it earlier, and he ended up pulling the trigger for Auburn, and it was a good start to what they're hoping is a great week. Like I said, it's Wednesday, and moving on to who's still out there on the table. Obviously, Jalen Green is announcing Thursday, so tomorrow. Now, this recruitment, I think, and I'm in the minority, and I've said this on the bunker. If you don't know what the bunker is, go to it's auburnsports.com. It's Auburn's rivals page. It's the main message board there. It's the place to go if you want Auburn information, sports stuff. JG Tate and them do an unbelievable job, and for all the content, it's really cheap. So go check them out. They're really good guys too. And again, they're up to date with their stuff. But moving back to Jalen, I'm in the minority because I think this one has been kind of known for a while, and I get this sneaking suspicion that Bruce has known for a decent amount of time. Nothing crazy, not a month or anything like that. I think he's known. I think it was solidified probably about 4 or 5 days ago. And in my coaching corner, what I really want to explain is the dynamic and the archetype of recruiting and how it is so different per kid, especially when you get to elite level kids. For example, you look at Jalen Green's recruitment. I guarantee you Bruce and his staff, when they started recruiting Jalen Green, the first thing you do, because again, I've done it before. I was a college coach for 9 years. And you go in there and you diagnose, okay, what type of recruitment is this going to be? Which means who is making the decision? Who is making the ultimate decision? Is it the dad? Is it the mom? Is it the kid? Is it the grandma? Is it the uncle? Who's making the decision? And it's pretty obvious to find that out pretty quickly. And if you look, obviously Jalen Green is making this decision. So what does that mean? Well, that tells you the way you have to attack it. And what Bruce has done, and what all great coaches that are recruiters do, is understand that it is a game of chess. And when you're recruiting a kid, you're almost like a lawyer. You're building a case. And I always thought this was a great analogy. You're like a lawyer building a case. And what you have to understand, and what I think Bruce and his staff understand, is that to get a kid of this high profile, to be consistent with a kid like that, it can't just come from one person. It can't just be Bruce and that kid. It can't just be Ira and that kid. It can't just be Stephen Pearl and that kid. It's got to be Bruce and that kid, if you think about it like a chessboard, queen on queen, and all the pawns around him that are pushing him towards Auburn. And if you look and you say, who are the pawns? And if you really look, because if you do this long enough, you start picking up kind of on trends. And really you look at when the kid's making the decision, the friends around the kid, the other high-profile kids that are getting recruited with the kid. And you start to notice kind of what group he falls into. Kind of like he fell into Sharif Cooper's group and Isaac Okoro's group and those guys. And if you've seen that consistent movement throughout this whole deal, those are pawns. Sharif Cooper's a pawn. All the Auburn players who I'm sure have helped recruit Jalen are pawns. The assistant coaches are pawns. And so Bruce has positioned them all around Jalen to when it gets tough, when that decision does get super hard, he's able to fall back on that. Auburn has provided him something to fall back on. And again, hopefully I'm dropping this on the bunker today, so hopefully you guys are listening, because I personally think, and again, I may be wrong, but I'm typically right on this stuff. I personally think that this G League talk is to throw everybody off, because kids are sneaky. You have to remember that. When you're when you're an adult and you're following recruiting, and it's so much fun to follow recruiting. It's so much fun to recruit. It's unbelievably tiring, but it is a lot of fun, especially when it's going good. But kids are very, very sneaky, and I'll give you an example. Look at JT Thor. Just a couple days ago, everybody had him going to Oklahoma State. What was he telling the Oklahoma State people? I'm coming. Well, come to find out that on the Thursday before the Sunday he committed, he already had the edit made and told the guy where he was going. And kids play this game, especially because if you think about it and just follow the bouncing balls. What have you heard up until this G League talk? Auburn, 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 Auburn. And in my opinion, I think Jalen Green wants some mystery to his announcement. So what do? You make it seem like you're going somewhere else, but you don't make it seem like you're going to Memphis, because I'm sure he has a good relationship with the Memphis coaches, and he doesn't want to do that to them, and I respect that. So what's the only other option to do it to? The G League. That's the gut I get from this. That's the hunch I feel from this. I think the Snapchat on Jalen Green's Snapchat, you're supposed to be my brother regardless of where I go, I think that's a setup. I think it's a setup. And we'll see. We'll see tomorrow if it is. But if you look at the trends of that recruitment, and I think Bruce diagnosed that recruitment in understanding that Jalen's making the decision and put the pawns around him. And I think at the end, that is what pushed Auburn over the edge. And I think he's going to commit to Auburn tomorrow. And I think he will ultimately sign with Auburn. And right now, I'm in the minority thinking that. Now, speaking of archetypes, let's look at Greg Brown. Greg Brown is the 6'8" kid out of Texas that it's apparently come down really to Auburn and Texas. He's another 5-star. He's an NBA player. You turn the film on, he's a huge fluid athlete. I mean, it's scary that a guy that big can move that flawlessly. But if you look at that recruitment compared to Jalen Green's, it's 100% different. Every recruitment's different, but, as Drake says, there's levels to the shit. So with Greg Brown, you go in there, and I guarantee you, Bruce, and every other staff that's recruited him has seen, okay, the dad's making the decision. Daddy is making the decision. So you can attack this like you attack Jalen Green's recruitment. It's not just about the pawns that you put around Jalen Green. Now you're having to win the father, which is tough, because it's a lot harder to recruit adults than it is kids. And it's not because you're trying to trick the kids, and it's not easy to trick adults. Adults have a lot more preconceived notions about people that are recruiting their kids and where they're recruiting their kids to. So you're having to fight more years of preconceived notions and, not stereotypes, but what they think it really is, especially if you don't have a relationship with the man. I'm sure Bruce and Greg Brown's dad haven't been friends forever. I think Greg Brown's dad and Shaka Smart have had a relationship for a while. And I think in this deal, Auburn had to go in there and hit a home run. If Auburn gets Greg Brown, which I put it at 50-50 right now because it's 9 days away. I think it's too far out. But Bruce has to go in there and hit a home run to get this one. And when you're recruiting a father, because the thing at this level, and a kid, with talent to be able to go to the biggest schools available, every visit's going to be unbelievable. All the facilities are going to be nice. The visit's going to be geared toward the most positive outcome for the kid's top priorities available. They know priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4, blah, 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 blah. They're going to hit that. It's going to be amazing. All the resources, we have this. We can do this. You know what I'm saying? We have this program and all this other stuff. If all that's equal, you've got to go in there and win with the dad. And that's tough. But obviously Bruce sparked something with the dad to be in this position. But it's two totally different types of recruitment. Two totally different types. And I think people really need to understand that in recruiting, and that's football, basketball, baseball, it's so fluid. And I've been on both sides of it. I've thought, man, there's no way I'm going to get this kid. I'm fading fast with him. It's getting close to signing day, and all of a sudden, here comes signing day, and he calls me up and says, "Coach, I'm coming." And it's a great feeling. Now, there's also the other side of that coin. When you've recruited a kid, for over a year, you've sat in his house, his parents, his little brother's name, you and him to formed a relationship that you feel is strong enough to win it out. And all of a sudden at the end, he flips the switch and goes somewhere else. And it's a terrible feeling. In recruiting, you never, ever, ever know until it is signed on the dotted line, sealed, and delivered. That's the beauty of it. That's the horror of it. So at the end, as a coach, even sitting right now, I'm sure Bruce has a good feeling where Jalen's going, but you don't know until the fat lady sings. And that's just the honest to God's truth. So that's kind of my coach's corner in understanding the archetypes of recruiting. And those are just two. There's many more. And again, we can get into some more of those, obviously as football recruiting, comes back around the corner. And I did want to shift, to football. And really one last note on basketball before we shift. If you look at what's happening in the SEC, and I just glanced at this, and you look at the recruiting rankings, and you have, Kentucky number 1. I think Tennessee's 5, LSU 6. It's the SEC when it decides to be good in something or it wants to be great in something. It is amazing how fast it can become great. Look at the coaches, and I'm talking about basketball now, in the SEC in basketball. Just look at the coaches that have been brought in. It's unbelievable. I mean, you've got Jerry Stackhouse at Vanderbilt, and really a lot of them are names. Like, to me, Tom Crean is not a great coach, but it's a big name in basketball, in college basketball, at Georgia. And I think he'll do okay there. I think he'll recruit well enough to do okay there. But then you look like Eric Musselman at Arkansas. I'm telling you right now, if there's a team to be worried about in basketball, it's Arkansas. Because that city loves their basketball too. Now, don't forget that. Don't forget that. And Eric Musselman is a damn good coach, an unbelievable recruiter. And he just adds another grenade in the belt of the SEC. And it's only getting better. I mean, Kermit Davis ain't no slouch at Ole Miss. And it'll only continue to get better. So, again, it's something where, boy, Auburn peaked at the right time. Because there's still, if you look at the elite tier right now of SEC basketball, I mean, if you look at the past, let's say 3 years, this past season, Auburn finishes top 2 in the conference. The season before that, they win the SEC tournament, finished in the top half of the conference, win the SEC tournament. The year before that, win the co-champions of the SEC regular season. So in the past 3 years, it's really been Auburn, Kentucky, and LSU, really. And Tennessee the 2 years before that. So I'd throw Tennessee in there, even though it wasn't a great year for them. So if you look at that upper tier, that's really been what it is. I'm not sold on Florida with Mike White. Not sold on them. Not honestly, and think Frank Martin, is a great personality, and I think he is a good coach, but South Carolina really hadn't done a damn thing since they went to the Final Four. So you can't put them up there. So again, Bruce has taken Auburn to an absolute level that, a lot of us, a lot of people would never have thought possible. But I do want to shift to football. And for all the people out there that almost, you either don't know how to feel about Gus Malzahn, or you really don't know how to kind of sum up what Gus Malzahn as a head coach at Auburn, really what has been, the glaring weakness, and there's been great heights reached. Gus Malzahn has had an incredible career. If he were to stop today, the dude's had an incredible career. I mean, he's the head coach at Auburn, and it's been there for a while. So it's not like he's a dud coach or anything, but I feel like it's very, very simple to diagnose Auburn under Gus Malzahn. And I think it's very easily laid out like this. When Gus Malzahn or Auburn has a good offensive line, Auburn has a chance to make the playoff every year. And when they've had great offensive lines, Auburn has been dominant. But how many years of Gus Malzahn's tenure as head coach has Auburn had a dominant offensive line? Because you can have, I think Bo Nix is going to be unreal. I think he's going to be unreal. But I can go ahead and give you a hint. You can have the best quarterback in the world, the best skill players in the world. But if you're not able to protect, or you're not able to line up and run the ball when you have to, you are not going to consistently win big games. And the word in there is consistently. You're not going to go 11-1. You're not going to go 12-0. Shit, you're not going to go 10-2, really. So you're not going to make the playoff. And that is what has happened. Just look, the MO last year and most years against Auburn is stop the run, don't turn the ball over, and you'll win. And if teams do that, the teams that are talented enough, then they beat Auburn. And I'm not talking about Mississippi State. I'm not talking about Ole Miss. I'm not talking about Vanderbilt. I'm talking about when it comes down to season definers, and you can never take anybody lightly, but I'm talking about people that match Auburn's talent or exceed it. The Georgias, the Alabamas, the LSUs, the Floridas. What does Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson all have in common? Let's say in the past 4 to 5 years. Answer: elite offensive lines. It is so much easier to play a skill position when you are super talented up front. And teams last year would stack the box against Auburn to stop the run. And people think, oh, it's just to stop the run. Oh, it's just to stop the run. Well, yeah, that's most of it. But there's also another dynamic that if you haven't been really inside of it, you don't really see. And it's this, is that a lot of times when people line up to stop the run, defensive linemen automatically assume run. They just do. It's a natural thing. So when the ball's snapped and all of a sudden they have to transition to a pass rush, well, a good offensive lineman is going to bury your ass. That's what they love. Because it's a whole hell of a lot harder to pass protect when you got a guy screaming off the ball knowing it's a pass, as opposed to them lining up against the run because they've been told just stop the run and we'll win, and now they got to transition to a pass rush. It costs them a step and it costs them time. But against Auburn, teams could line up and say, you know what, guys? We're going to line up to stop the run. If you have to transition to a pass rush, they really struggle in pass protection anyway. So you're getting almost like a 2-for-1 defensively. You're able to stop the run due to alignment and method, but you're also able to affect the passer while assuming it's run because they can't pass protect consistently. That is how you lose. And Auburn has won some big games, but if you watch the big games that Auburn wins, they're in spots. They're not consistent. And last year, Auburn's defensive line, and most years, Auburn's defensive line is elite enough to go to the playoff to win a national championship, like last year. And it won them some games. But a defensive line is not going to win you 11, 12 games. They're not. You got to be able to line up and run the ball on 3rd and 1. You got to be able to do it without any trickery or anything like that. Got to be able to just put the ball on the ground and say, line up, I'm going to line up and run this thing for at least 1.5 yards. And Auburn has not been able to do that. And it's that simple, guys. It's that simple. And if you look at recruiting, look at who signs all the top elite offensive linemen. Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma. I'll give you another great example. You want a parallel? Look at Clay Helton at USC. They have 5-star skill players everywhere. I think the Water Boy's a 5-star. But they go what? 8-4? 7-5? Shit, they went through 3 quarterbacks because they couldn't protect the damn passer. And it loses you games. You cannot be consistent when you're not good up front. That will be that way until the end of time. Till an asteroid takes out the earth. In football, it'll be that way. And until that problem is fixed, you're going to continue to see, hey, Auburn will win a big game at home every 2 years against Georgia and Alabama, but they're not going to be able to, go on the road and beat Georgia and Alabama and then beat LSU at home in the same season. You haven't seen that. And Auburn's had chances. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the JBOY Show. You can find me on Twitter at the JBOY Show. That's at the JBOY Show. Ask any questions. Hopefully, if this catches on, I'll be able to have guests and kind of move it on as far as I can take it. And I really appreciate you guys listening. Just remember, like I said, it's at the JBOY Show. I'm also on Spotify at the JBOY Show as well. All right, JBOY out.